In this video I will show you that the McLaren 720S loses on average $68,500 per year and whether or not now is a good moment to enter the market. What's up YouTube and welcome to a new video. Now if you're watching the famous automotive YouTube channels, then you are probably aware that the McLaren 720S is decreasing in price rapidly. Maybe you're also aware then that there are some voices saying that the market is bottoming out and that now is a right moment to buy. But is it really a good moment to enter the market? I'd rather trust the data than someone's gut feeling, so let's analyze the 720 market. And as in all my other analysis, we're going to do this by taking a top-down approach. That means that first we will have a look to the full Super Series market and we will see how the prices of the 720S relate to the ones of the 650S and the 12C. In the second step we will zoom in then to only the 720S market and we will figure out the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1000 miles driven. In step 3 I will show you then what the forecasted prices are, and in step 4 we will compare all of these depreciation numbers to the other cars which I've analyzed on this channel. All the way at the end of the video, so in step 5, we will have a look then as to what a fair purchasing price is for a 720S at this moment. Let's start now with step number 1 and have a look to the full Super Series market. And that is appearing right over here. You can see that in this graph we have the model year on the horizontal axis and the price on the vertical axis. Each car is indicated by a bubble, but the bubbles have different colors. You can see that in orange we have the 720S, in green the 650S, and finally that the 12C is displayed in blue. Now if we look into the price points, then we can see that, quite obviously, the 720S is priced quite a lot higher than the 650S and the 12C. The average price point for a 720S is namely $320,000 and this is $171,000 more than the average price for a 650S. The 650S namely has an average price point of $149,000. And that is of course a huge price difference between the two model years and a lot larger difference than the one which we can see between the 650S and the 12C. The average price of a 12C is namely $106,000 and this is $43,000 below the price of a 650S. Now we will circle back to this graph at a later point in the video because we will now first have a look to the 720S market. If I namely remove the 650S and the 12C from the graph, then you can see that in fact we have 173 720S's for sale. Now what is perhaps a little bit extraordinary about this market is that there are more new cars for sale than used cars. And as you can probably imagine, the majority of the 2020 cars are the new ones. But also this group of cars over here, with model year 2019, are new cars. And they of course represent the unsold stock. Another interesting fact by the way is that McLaren 720S owners apparently don't really like colors. Around 30% of the market is made up out of black and white cars. If we look into the prices, then we can see first of all that the price variation within the model years is huge, but also that across the model years the variation is very large. Prices namely start roughly at $200,000 but go then up all the way to $420,000. And that is a difference of $220,000 in the car market which is only 2 years old. And of course that already reveals something about the depreciation numbers which you can expect here. So let's have a look to the depreciation per year. Before we continue however, please remember to smash that like button as it really helps to support the channel. And we will do that with the graph appearing right over here, where you can see that we've still the model year on the horizontal axis and the prices on the vertical axis. You can see however that there's now a blue solid line going through the graph, and that line shows the depreciation curve. And to get a clean curve, I only included new cars in model year 2020 and only used cars in the other model years. Now at the beginning of the video I already showed you that the depreciation per year is $68,500. But thank God this is an average number. And you're not losing this amount every single year on a 720S. In the first year of ownership though, you can see that you can expect to lose a lot more than $68,500 as the values drop with around $106,000. After this major hit however, we can see that the market stabilizes and that in the second year of ownership you can expect to lose only $27,000. Now there's just no way around it. It doesn't matter how you look to this data, it just looks bad. Now exactly how bad, that I will show you later in the video because then I will compare the relative average depreciation rate to the other cars which I've analyzed on this channel. And that will give you a pretty good idea if these numbers are actually high or low from a relative perspective then. Before we will go there however, we will first have a look to the depreciation per 1000 miles driven and the forecasted values. It is then also the depreciation per 1000 miles graph which is appearing now on your screen. And you can see that instead of model year, we have the mileage on the horizontal axis. Furthermore, you can see that the graph is split by the new and the used cars, and that there are many cars for sale, so the new cars, which have 0 miles driven. Now at the other end of the spectrum, you can also see that there's one 720S for sale, which has a mileage of 12,000 miles. Now on average, so for the full market, the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven is $18,000. You can see, however, that this number flattens very quickly, just as with the depreciation per year, and that after around $4,000, the depreciation curve per 1,000 miles driven would become a lot more flat. The used cars have then also a lot lower depreciation number with $2,200 per 1,000 miles driven. And in the grand scheme of things, this number is not too bad. And with that out of the way, we covered the depreciation per year and the depreciation per 1,000 miles driven. And that means that we have enough input to say something about the forecasted values. And a good starting point to figure out where the 720S market might be heading is of course the old Super Series. After all, for those who already know the depreciation, so let's insert one major depreciation curve to the McLaren market. That is what you can see now on your screen, and you can see that we have the 650S in model year 2015 and 16 and the 12C in model year 2012, 13 and 14. And according to this graph, the 720S market is not even close to bottoming out. However, we need to take one important thing into account, and that is that the successors usually go for a premium over the predecessors. You can see, for example, that the 650S is around $20,000 more expensive than a 12C. And most likely, this gap will always remain there, because the 650S is a better car than the 12C. I do then also not think that the 720S market will follow the exact depreciation path what you see here. Rather, I think that the 720S's will bottom at a level above the 650S's, just because the 720S is a better car than the 650S. However, the depreciation pattern, what we see here, is of course relevant, and I do think then also that the 720S will follow this pattern. The bottom, however, will be higher than the bottom for the 12C and the 650S. Now if we take this approach and we shift the end of the depreciation curve up, then you can see that you can still expect some depreciation. But the number would be of course a lot less than the current average depreciation rate. And this result is in line with the result of the forecast model, which I ran in the background. That model namely shows that the 2018 cars, 1 year from now, will have an average price point just a bit over $200,000. And that means that you can expect a drop of around $21,000 on a 2018 car. Now then, let's figure out exactly how bad the situation is. I can namely already reveal that this is not the worst car market I've ever analyzed on this channel. Some cars are performing even worse. And I'm going to show you with the depreciation leaderboard which cars that are. Now the depreciation leaderboard is appearing right on your screen, where you can see that we have the different cars on the horizontal axis and the relative average depreciation rate on the vertical axis. If we find then the 720S, then we can see it is the second worst ranking car at a relative rate of 18%. It is only the Giulia QV which performs worse at a rate of 20%. We do, however, need to consider that the 720S is a relative new car, for which there are only 3 model years available. And that of course means that the average depreciation rate tends to be higher than, for example, for a car for which there are 10 model years available. Nevertheless, if we look to other cars which are just as new as the 720S, such as the AMG GTR, then we can see that the depreciation rate is indeed high, but not completely off the charts like the one for the 720S. The AMG GTR namely has a rate of 16%. The 720S is however such an expensive car to buy new that the absolute numbers look rather daunting. Now then, at the end of the video, I will answer the question as to whether or not it is a good moment to enter the 720S market. If you are, however, notwithstanding all the bad news which I just told you, are already convinced that the 720S is the car for you, then you definitely need to keep on watching, because I'm going to show you now what a fair purchasing price is. And to find out exactly what such a price is, we of course need to consider the model year, the price and the mileage. It are then also these 3 elements which are inputted to a model which determines for us what a fair purchasing price is. And the result of that analysis you can find right over here, where you can see that we've now indeed the model year, the price and the mileage. You can also see that each car is still represented by a bubble, but that the bubbles are now colored. And the darker the color of the bubble, the more likely it is that that car has a fair purchasing price. Now if I put this then on the big screen, so you can see slightly better what's going on, then you can see that the cars with a fair purchasing price need to have a price below $240,000, but also that they need to have a mileage of less than 8,000 miles. On top of that, you can also see that the variance in the bubbles is very large. For $230,000, you can get a 720S with almost 0 miles, and you can also get one with more than 10,000 miles for that price. Now, because the 720S market is still so new, the spec of course also plays a role in the pricing of the cars. Nevertheless, also when taking that into account, I think that the pricing spread is quite large, showing that there is uncertainty in the 720S market. And on that note, let's wrap up this video and conclude. We started this video with the question, is it time to enter the 720S market? Well, yes and no. Let me explain. Right now is the best moment to enter the market since the introduction of the 720S. It is namely so that when we look to the depreciation numbers, we can clearly see that by getting a 2018 car, you avoid most of the depreciation hit. However, according to the Super Series depreciation curve and the forecasting model, you can expect of course still some depreciation going forward. And in line with that same forecast model, I would say that the expected depreciation for a 2018 car is around 10%. For that money you will however get one of the fastest cars in that price segment. And actually, now I think about it, just one of the fastest cars in general. So why wouldn't it then be a good idea to enter the market right now? First of all, in absolute terms, you're still looking at a depreciation rate somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000, and that is a hell lot of money. Second, a relative depreciation rate of 10% might be quite low for a 720S, but for other cars it's actually quite high. A similar age GT3 sits namely more towards the 5%. Finally then, the third point, you need to take into account that McLaren offers a 3-year warranty on their new cars, meaning that the 2018 cars will go out of warranty quite soon. Now you can probably purchase extended warranty, but if you read around on the McLaren forums, then you know that this is not a cheap option. Now to sum it up, if a 720S is your dream car and you always wanted one, then I think now is the time that you should start considering to purchase one. If you would however be buying the car purely because you think that the prices won't drop anymore, then I think you're way too early. Now if you enjoyed this video, please remember to smash that like button and to subscribe for more videos to come. I will namely post a new depreciation analysis every week. Also make sure to check out some of my other videos on the channel, as you will find there for example a full depreciation analysis for the McLaren 570S and the Porsche GT3. As always, a huge thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week.